and welcome to Colette and Matt have entered the chat. It's a weekly conversation about the single most important thing. There is nothing more prescient than this one topic. I think you all know what it is. Wait, what?
Dopamine.
Dopamine.
Actually, for this particular episode, dopamine might be mildly more important than video games, or at least deeply intertwined.
Spoilers. What my co-host, Colette Bennett, how are you?
Hi, I'm great.
Is alluding to is that this is a very special episode of the chat. I wanted to get like that after school special music.
I'm literally like have my hands clapped over my mouth, trying not to like screech into the microphone because I was laughing so hard.
We for listeners, we can't see each other. This is not a video call. It's just a podcast chat talking thing. So like Colette did not know that music was coming. So I thought you just were like silent, like what the fuck is this? But in fact, you're doubled over.
Yeah,
in laughing.
I was trying not to be like,
I'm glad that joke actually worked because like
that was good.
I just pulled some shit off of the YouTube audio library, which side note, if you are a content producer, whatever you do, videos or podcasts or Twitch, whatever, like getting stock music used to be expensive. It used to suck or whatever. And then YouTube's like, we have a library, and it was fucking trash for about a year and change. And now it is great. I cannot believe how good. They're like, hey, YouTube, stop pirating all this music. Here's a bunch of free shit, and you can use it without attribution. You can use it as much as you want.
Great.
You can throw it on your podcast, whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, they solved it. They solved the piracy problem by just giving away great shit for free. And I applaud you, YouTube. Thank you for that.
That's really great. I also used to use like copyright free, like lo-fi playlists for my stream. And was always amazed by the fact that those people make those and then specifically are like, please use these for whatever you want.
Well,
and
that's, the generosity of beautiful people on the internet. That's spectacular. That's its own thing. But for a corporation to be like, we're going to foot the bill for all this bullshit is also great. But shout out to the internet creators who are like, yeah, take it all. We love you.
For real. Definitely. Both are pretty rad concepts. So,
but it is a very special episode that we literally just came up with. You came up with on the spur of the moment, and we both agreed it has to happen. So please elaborate.
Sure. Well, so I think it was probably 2-3 weeks ago, maybe on my own stream, in passing while I was chatting with some people and playing a game, I said, I have ADHD, I'm neurodivergent, and it's a topic that I consider myself, an activist for, that I want to continue to basically talk about my own experience and help other people that have this condition feel seen, feel heard, and better understand and like create a space where we can talk about it more regularly. Because if you know anything about ADHD, you know that there are a lot of things about it that can provoke some pretty rough emotions, shame, fear, feeling like you're not fitting in, the frustration of, being told over and over things like, if you only applied yourself, or you have so much potential, just because you don't think the same way everyone else does. So, I mentioned this on the stream, and I expected maybe one other person to say, oh yeah, me too. Or, I think I have it, or whatever. Instead, I got people coming into the Discord that we have and saying, when are you going to do that episode? I want to make sure I don't miss it. And I was like, oh, that means that the conversation is needed by at least one person, and probably more. So that immediately makes me go, well, I really want to talk about it. Right. And so I thought, well, I'll do this stream. But then just randomly, I thought, hey, wait a minute. I know another neurodivergent person. And in fact, it's my co-host. So then it went to the next level of, wait a minute, we have great conversations about games. Why wouldn't we also have a great conversation about neurodiversity and what that looks like for two ADHDers, but also how games are intertwined into the way that our different experiences of having ADHD, like how that works. And that I personally feel like games have probably been one of the things that have really helped me in a mental health way on many levels.
Mm-hmm.
But for this, for sure, this is a piece of it because it's so hard. One thing I can say for my own ADHD is that, and it's taken me years to realize this, one of the biggest issues I have is being profoundly bored. Profoundly bored. And I used to feel like, well, if you're bored, you must not be very smart because there's so many things to do. But now that I better understand my own brain and how it works, I'm like, it has nothing to do with intelligence or not. It has to do with the different ways that the brains work.
Why do you go immediately to, I'm not smart? In that context, in an academic context of why can't I focus on this work? That's a whole thing that makes a lot of sense to me. But I feel bored all the time. Therefore, I'm a dum-dum. Like, why do you go there?
Well, let me. I mean, that probably has plenty of different answers, right? Plenty of different varieties of answer. But let's just hypothetically say that in grade school, people started looking at you and going, why do you use such big words? You're strange. And then like you get like straight A's and like glowing reviews in your English classes. But then the minute you walk into math class, you can't do anything. And there's a teacher peering at you and going, you're smarter than this. You need to try harder. You need to focus. Like, I do think that as I said before, like, having ADHD and not really understanding what's going on around you, like it can definitely put you in a situation where you feel really left out, where you feel not seen, not heard. And that can be really emotionally damaging. So I think that a lot of ADHDers, their default thought is probably, oh, I'm the problem.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
And I think it's taken me decades to get to a point where A, I'm comfortable in saying, yeah, I am neurodiverse. And B, like, I'm not the problem. Actually, often the society around me is a huge piece of the problem. And the way that it expects, certain types of, it's very narrow as far as what it expects.
It's incompatible.
It's incompatible. Yes, yeah. I would agree. So, what does that mean? I mean, maybe we should back up and before we get deep into our own personal experiences.
I was exactly going to ask you that because as you alluded, there are certainly folks in our community who share these experiences, but there's certainly others who have no idea what you're talking about. So perhaps, like you said, a definition or just some clarity around what this all means.
Yeah. Well, so I guess maybe a really good place to start is a textbook definition of ADHD. So there's what people joke about on the internet, which is, oh my God, squirrel. And that is one potential possibility of what ADHD can look
clinical, like. That when I need a clinical definition of a syndrome or a disease, I look at internet memes. That's where I go for that information. So yes, this is all I need. And we're done here.
Right. And it's, and then you also have people going, oh my God, like I'm so ADHD. And I don't hate those people. No, seriously, that's exactly what they sound like to me. I don't hate those people. And actually, to be honest, they have a point because, and I'll get more to this later. I do think that I'm noticing the pattern of a lot of people that are roughly my age, give or take a few years, that are noticing or going, wait, I have these symptoms. And I think a huge piece of that, I think ADHD is a couple of different combined potential causes. But I also think that growing up on the internet and being in a position where you are paying attention to 12, 13, 18 things at a time has exacerbated the issue. Do I have any data or proof? No. But do I have a gut feeling? Am I starting to notice like people around my age, other gamers, other like people who grew up on the internet? Yes, absolutely. So that I think is something we can definitely dig into more. But
yeah. And we have, well, briefly, you said, oh, couldn't we have a productive conversation about this? And I will just add to that, we have multiple times, and we'll get into that, but it's been off mic, separate from this. And so now we're bringing it to the forefront, which I'm excited to do. And also, I think I was talking with you of like, does the internet exacerbate these symptoms or these struggles, or is it also like people who are neurodiverse and need a lot of input gravitate to what do you call it? Very online lifestyles and or very online professions, such as the ones we happen to have been in for a little while now?
That is a terrific point, and honestly, one I hadn't really thought of. So I would say yes, probably so, because a fellow games writer who I follow on Twitter recently said, he tweeted something. He has ADHD and is pretty also open about talking about it, and he recently tweeted something about how he felt like at his best when he was like playing a game, wearing headphones with his phone open next to him so he could answer texts, because and the dog was sitting next to him and wagging its tail, so he would also have to pet the dog. And that the stimulus of playing the game, hearing the music in the headphones, petting the dog, and having the phone open to open the texts was enough stimulus for him to feel like right. And I thought to myself, on one hand, like, God, that makes it so hard to just sit still, right? But on the other hand, I was like, yeah, I too am probably at my best when I'm on my computer doing 6 different things.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, that was in a way, interesting. I mean, I guess on one hand, it could make us really good multitaskers.
I struggle with that very specifically, because if it's a leisure activity and all the pieces of the brain are occupied, meaning like the game, is probably just like a grindy, like do the same loop over and over kind of game. You don't have to think about that. And I'm listening to a podcast, and we don't have pets, but like, and the dog's with you, or you got a snack going. Then those are all things that fill up different nodes of the brain, and therefore it's good. But when it's time to get something done on the internet, to tell me if you agree or disagree, there ain't no multitasking. Like, you're either focused and getting shit done, or you're distracted and you're not. And there are strategies where it's like, I'm going to do a little bit of this, and then I'm going to take a break and look at some memes or whatever. And then I'm going to do more of this and then go back to Twitter or whatever it is that gets you going. But like, we have a good amount of science that says like multitasking is not a thing. Like, humans are bad at it, and you should try to not do it. And that's hard for typical people, very hard for neurodiverse people, I think.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. That's a really good way of putting it. But yeah, this is actually, all of this entire line of thought of the last 5 minutes has given me a lot to think about. And I feel like I might wander off in a very neurodiverse way.
Like in the conversation, like you're not going to just like leave the mic.
Not like get up from the mic and walk across the room. I that much I'm able to not do. Thank God. But so I want to go back to the main thread of what you were saying, which was just that, like, what does this mean? And there's a couple of things that I just really want to put into it before we go any further. So one is that a lot of people, when they hear ADHD, what they still think of is young hyper boys. And a big part of the reason for that is because for a tremendously large amount of time, the majority of the time that ADHD has been something that people knew what it was, all of the research on ADHD was done on boys and men. So the studies on women and how ADHD affects women are, they're coming along, but like, we're talking like 50, 60 years of research only on boys for
and that
a long time.
It was always couched. My memory of like hearing about what even this was in the media or whatever was always about the hyperactivity part of like can't sit still, can't whatever. But I never understood it until fairly recently as like a boredom threshold or a stimulus threshold where not enough stimulus is very challenging. You know, being bored is very hard. Too much stimulus, especially specific kinds of stimuli, are overwhelming. So if you look at it as like a graph, there's a sweet spot where that friend of yours or that writer you were talking about is like dog, game, music, text, cool. I'm in the zone. And for him, there's a curve there where it's like, boom, I'm right in there. And, you know, digging a ditch for 2 hours is going to be an excruciating experience for that person because there's not enough stimuli going on there.
Yeah.
And I had never understood the term ADD or ADHD with any of that context until literally this year, I would say.
It's hard, I think, because there just hasn't been a lot of awareness, you know, about it because of those, you know, the lack of studies on, you know, for a long time, you know, they would say about, doctors would say about women, oh, women don't get ADHD forever. Like that was like a really long standing thing. So now that we know, A, women do get ADHD. I mean, B, men, you know, boys grow into men and they still have ADHD.
Right. It's not a childhood thing that is grown out of necessarily. And maybe for some people it does abate or whatever. I don't know. But
but another piece of it is, and I think this is a big part of why the conversation is happening differently now, like thankfully, is because women and men present differently. So the hyperactivity, for instance, women don't have that as badly as men do, but women do really struggle with elements of attention difficulty. And then there's also like social cue things. Like one thing about ADHD is that it tends to exist with other comorbidities. So if you have ADHD, you likely also have anxiety or depression or things that all kind of dovetail together because of the ways that like they function. So that's another crazy piece. You're like, ooh, like this is getting even more complicated, you know?
Well, especially because you are experiencing symptoms of one of those things, and then you're talking to a professional, a doctor, an MD, a psychiatrist, whatever, and you're trying to get at like, why am I so anxious or why am I so down? And you're not even looking at the ADHD part because that's not. It's almost like, you know, why am I so tired? That's the symptom, but the actual root cause is something else. You know, you have cancer, and I'm not, you know, being dark, but like, you know, the root issue is a thing that is not seen yet, not revealed.
Exactly. Yes, totally. That's really well put. And I think also like recognizing what ADHD can potentially look like, other than those main things that we know it from, has been really well expressed by memes and comics drawn by people who have it. And I've noticed that that's been a part of me helping to find like my own language, you know, my own understanding of what it looks like for me. Like, my attention issues are that it's very, and this has been since in school, very, 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 very hard for me to pay attention to things I don't think are interesting. But if I think it's interesting, you cannot pry me away.
Yeah.
You just can't, you know? What can I say?
Very intrigued by this sort of language. There's something you can express in a comic or a meme or even like a video or a GIF or something that is communicates in a way that words or writing or whatever can't, you know. And there's a certain type of relational humor, it's very hard to define what memes do and express, of course, but you know it when you see it. And this is achieved for any number of communities. It's like,
Definitely.
we all love this game, and you look at a meme for a game that only you and 10,000 other people play, and everyone in that community is going to instantly look at it and be like, classic. And if you're not in there, you're like, what the fuck? What is it? Who's it? What? And so I find it really fascinating that there's a quiet language of people who only understand what this means. It's cool. It's really cool.
And here's where it all dovetails together, right? One thing that seems to be able to deeply and like comprehensively capture the attention of ADHD people and give them a sort of peace is video games.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I thought that there were a lot of different reasons I loved video games, because I have been a storyteller probably since I picked up a pen. I grew up reading books and just, devoured stories. I loved that. I was, interested in techie kind of things early on. Like I remember playing text adventure games on my uncle's, I don't know, like freaking Tandy or something. Like God knows how old that computer was. But like I was always interested in that stuff. So, there was like a fantasy storytelling loving element. There was grew up in some difficult circumstances, in my childhood. And some of those were, I know for a fact, like it helped to have a distraction and something to lose myself in. Other than
escapism.
Books. Yeah, escapism.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't think I ever realized, like, that I was struggling already in school at that point. And I was probably maybe like 9 or 10, struggling already in school with certain topics while excelling at others, but finding this absolute hyper focus on games that I loved. And I've said before, like those games became like friends because, they provided a refuge and a source of interest that, I mean, quite frankly, we're here almost 30 years later, and I feel the exact same way about them.
Right.
So I really think that they have been healing in a lot of ways for my ADHD. And that's something that I really wanted to talk about today because, I wonder if other gamers who identify as ADHD see it that way too.
Or people who have not yet decoded this stuff for themselves, but they too will understand how the loops and escapism of games make you feel at peace or make you feel in control or whatever else. And I just love this whole like, growing up, I love escapism, and like people want to escape for a variety of reasons, traumatic reasons or whatever, but also real life is boring as fuck.
And hard and also scary. Like, like there's so many things that are so very difficult to deal with.
So like, y'all got elves and spaceships over there? I'm going to go over there. That's just cool. That's going to be more fun than fucking homework.
I just saw that as y'all got elves and spaceships over there, ? On my way as a t-shirt, as a black t-shirt with that written on it. And on the back it says 59 FPS. Fuck that.
Oh, the merch.
I know, really. The merch
may never come.
One day. But yeah. So at any rate, I think, do I think only ADHDers play games? Of course not. Billions of people play games. But I have a theory that ADHDers are getting, I guess you could say we're getting dopamine. We probably are off of having a really engaging, exciting gaming experience. And I know that sometimes I kind of feel some of the same physical sensations and emotions when we're recording the podcast and talking about those games. So I don't have to be just playing the games. I can also be talking about them.
Yes. there is something about being okay, I'll back up. When I was first figuring out and exploring the idea of like, why am I feeling so bad, or why am I struggling with this or that? And then slowly through talk therapy and other explorations, like saying, oh, maybe this is related to neurodiversity or ADHD. And I'll say that, like, I am not diagnosed, but every time I talk about it with a professional or talk about it with someone who is concretely diagnosed, like yourself, I'm like, oh shit. And so you said, I texted you one day, I was like, what, back in the day, in some meeting or conversation that we had probably at work, you might have casually mentioned it in some offhanded way. And then I was like, hey, do you mind if I ask you about that ADHD stuff? And you were like, of course, I would be happy to talk about it, because you are thankfully and graciously open, as you are saying here, and have been with friends and colleagues for a long time, and our community here. And you said something like, when people talk to me about boring shit, it's like sand is falling through my fingers. I'm looking at them, I'm hearing words, and I just cannot keep those words.
The words are
brain.
Slippery, wet fish.
And I was like, holy
I remember that you were
shit.
like, that was it. That was the click. It clicked for you when I said that.
You just described my entire life as a kid, and also carrying through an adult. If someone is like, so this weather we're having, I'm like, huh?
And even worse, it's so easy, and this is where a part of the shame comes in that can be associated with ADHD. It's even worse when, from a young age, you're getting, pay attention. Why are you so, you're better than this. You have such good potential, like, oh, stop daydreaming. There's so many, because of the way society works, because we don't have a lot of recognition for what neurodiversity looks like, in a creative, positive, affirming way. I think that as a result, we don't pause and go, well, is my child just lazy or not paying attention or whatever, or is something else going on? And if so, how can I learn more about that state of mind? We're not, that's a lot of patience that's required right there. And we all know that, I'm sure you can confirm, parents are tired. We're doing a lot. You're doing a lot, I should say. I am not a parent. But, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to handle. It's emotionally exhausting. It's physically exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. So yeah, to have that kind of bandwidth, I get it. It can be really, really hard, right? But I do think there are definitely some organizations, like, for instance, I have an aunt who's a Montessori school teacher. And I do feel like if you were lucky enough as a child to get into Montessori school, you have a much better chance as a neurodiverse, either ADHD or an autistic child or whatever, to be heard and understood versus the typical societal system, the school system.
From what little I know of the Montessori philosophy, I do think that's very
it's
apt,
cool.
sure.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I do think that as we continue to learn and be more informed about things like this and realize, that what we thought ADHD meant is a part of it, but it's like, hardly the whole picture, more people will be able to identify. And that means that more people can find the help that they may desperately need. And I think a lot of people also, when they hear ADHD, they think about boys, they think about hyperactivity, and they think about Ritalin, because those were the things that were done for the first 20, 30, 40 years of ADHD research. It was all boys. They were hyperactivity issues. So give them Ritalin and they'll calm down.
Oh, and that it's an epidemic, and that it's overprescribed, and it's doctors just handing out pills, and a lot of mythology around that stuff.
And there's so much focus on the bad of what there's nothing about that, even that research where someone was going, oh, well, this makes little boys hyper, but it also makes this, and this happen, and those are cool things. No, that's something we're only talking about now, and I think that's pretty crucial.
Yes,
because if you came up in the first 50 years that ADHD was an existing thing that was diagnosable, you didn't have any good thing about it. You wanted to take medicine to get rid of it.
Right. There's so much more to say and discuss on all those things, but very briefly, I just wanted to circle back to one other thing you said, which is doing this conversation on a weekly basis, sitting down with someone who is as laser focused and passionate about a thing, in this case games, as you are, is enough. Meaning talking about regular stuff, or even not boring stuff, even mildly interesting stuff, or the work that you do, like, that's fine. But even that gets old after a while, and you sort of need to fill your brain with other stuff to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
But at least for me, when I click with someone, like, if you're at a party or you're at a family gathering or whatever, and it's a bunch of boring ass bullshit small talk, but then you find someone who's like, oh, like this person is I don't know, an environmental toxic marine biologist or whatever, just something really awesome.
Right.
And you're like, whoa, you like swim with sea turtles? And then you're like 4 hours later, you have just been talking to this one person because they're so great. That I can just do that for a very long time if it's interesting. And so that is what this has become and can be for me. I'm just sitting here listening to you and talking to you. I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to be playing something or, fidgeting or whatever. Like, I'm good, and I know that's a little bit different for you, and you can elaborate on that. But like, I just wanted to like add an addendum to your point of like, this kind of conversation is very good for my mental health. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Talking about stuff. I'm obsessing all week about whatever it is that I'm playing or whatever's going on in the games world. There's no one in my life or family that I can, aside from the kids being like, yay, Metroid's coming out. Like, I can't get into the weeds with anyone. Except we sit down here and we get into it. And with our community too. So it's just, I'm seeing that in a different light now that I think about my boredom brain a little bit differently these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so nice to hear. And I have to reflect back and say that not only do I hear that from you, it really resonates for me too. Because, I think it's so easy to just be like, oh, we're gamers and we like these things, blah, 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 but when you understand some of these like deeper issues that are intertwined throughout that, it kind of gives more meaning on the whole. Like, for instance, one lesson that I've learned in the last couple of years that's been like really big in my personal like evolution and journey has been that being seen and being heard are both incredibly important to me. So what does that mean? Yeah. Well, the TLDR version is I grew up in a household where, because of certain circumstances, being seen for who I truly was and accepted for that, or being heard and being able to express myself the way that you're just describing, was pretty tough. And it wasn't because I had shitty parents. I had great parents who were like loving and wonderful. They just had their own shit. And like, that's kind of how sometimes that thing works, right? Then you throw into kind of like, trying to live life as a neurodiverse person and living in a society that's really doesn't have any kind of welcoming or understanding of, neurodiversity up to a very recent point. And even then it's a small subsect that's growing, right? It's really, really easy, I think, to once again, not feel seen and not feel heard. And I really believe that is one of the most important things. And the reason why I'm getting more and more vocal about ADHD and what it looks like and all of the different ways that it's, morphed over time as scientists better understand it, as people better understand it, I get more and more passionate about talking about it, specifically because I'm starting to see the superpowers of it, not just the weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I know that me sitting here and having this conversation with you on this podcast might mean that one person might hear this who's a gamer and who already listens to our podcast. One person might listen and go, oh my God, it's me. And I'm not alone. And
Right.
I'll be honest, there's nothing more important that I could do, in my opinion, than that. Like, yeah, I guess I could go win the Nobel Prize or something, but you know, video games.
It's yeah. There's nothing more important. What superpowers? Tell me more about. I mean, I know what you're alluding to, but let's talk about that a
Go
little
into
bit.
detail. So, like you were saying, you know, laser focus, right? Well, we call that hyper focus in ADHD world. But the thing about hyper focus that's super cool is that it literally is the most, like, we can't focus when we're not interested or excited by something. But when we focus, there is no focus like neurodiverse focus.
You cannot be stopped.
And like my whole life, but especially in games, when I got into games, people would just be like, you have an enthusiasm that just cuts through everything. It makes me excited. And at first I thought that's really cool. And then with some time I was like, well, the only good thing about me is that I'm so excited. Like that's all I have to offer is that I'm just excited about things. And that hurt, right? To think about that. And now I'm kind of at a point where I'm like, that is one of my great talents, is that I have this true, and it's genuine joy. It's genuine excitement. And it is very powerful and very intense. And it will not last forever because nothing does. But for me to get really excited about something and spout about it, like, I believe now that that energy is joy that the world needs and that I thrive off of too. So like me giving that away to somebody else, you know, here's a perfect example. You know, some time back we had the folks that made the Old Friends dog game. And so then after we had them on, I did a feature on it for work. And I remember calling the girl who does PR for Old Friends. And she said to me, thank you so much for your enthusiasm about what we're doing with this. I can literally feel it through the phone and it just makes my day so bright. And I thought to myself, I made that person's day better. Because I gave them hope about a thing that they did that was sure exciting, but like, you know how much time and effort they all had to have poured into.
You bust your ass to make a thing and you love that thing, but like, who knows if it's going to work and be successful and it's drudgery and whatever. And then someone on the other end of the phone is like, I love your thing. I love what this
and in a genuine way that makes them know that you're telling the truth. And I was like, that is being seen, that is being heard. And to me, that is one of the best gifts I can give anybody. So to me, that is a super power of my ADHD, that my genuine joy and happiness and excitement can be given away. And not only do I feel it, but I get to give it away to the people that I interact with about whatever that topic is, you know, whatever the thing. So to me, that is one of the big hyper, like, you know, that's the hyper focus power. And also you get some serious shit done. Like if you are fixated and you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to paint my motherfucking house purple. Like your house is going to be purple in like 72 hours. Like,
well, all right. Back up the truck. First of all, amen to the superpower. Number one. And I have three things to say that are just so fucking important. Okay, that because you know that's what's going on over here. A fucking men to the superpower. Number one. Number two, you said, oh, it won't last forever. This is who you are. So it is you. So like, you know, when we're 95 years old and you know ready to kick off, like maybe we won't be as excited about video games, but until then it is you. But here's a third important thing that I think is really key and unique. You're saying, oh, my superpower is my enthusiasm and getting other people excited or whatever, and only recently you've realized that, and that's special and important, but also we are living in a time where you can power an entire economy with that skill.
Yeah.
The internet has unlocked the enthusiasm machine, the fandom machine, the community communications machinery around, you like that? I like that. Oh my God, we like that. It's a YouTube channel. It's a podcast. It's a wiki. it's a website. It's news. It's a cycle. And these things have their problems and their challenges and their hype trains that get out of control. But you can make a living.
Yeah.
Being excited about things. And
that's the funny thing is that, when you think about quote unquote influencers, when you think about popular streamers, like when I think about that, what I realize is that the thing that I have simultaneously felt now good about, but for very many years of my life embarrassed about and bad about, is the thing that is fueling many people's careers that is making them a lot of money.
Yes.
And it's like,
yeah, and those are the success stories. And there's a whole lot more to unpack about, like, we see these successful influencers and how much fame and money they're making, and then we also want to do it too. And then we're just not as talented, or we didn't get in at the right moment, and the internet is littered with people who aspired to do those things and couldn't make it. And that's, on one hand, it's a tale as old as time. Like, hey, I want to be an NBA player too. I want to be a rock star too. So, oh man, I didn't get in the NBA. Oh, well, I guess I'll be an accountant and be miserable. Like, but I think we're living in an interesting time where it's like, okay, you understand that there's something, we understand as a society that, like, only 1% of the top 1% can be NBA players. And like, you can practice real hard, but like, you ain't getting into the NBA most likely. But now we are living in a world where, like, this dumbass down the road now has 400,000 TikTok followers. Why can't I could do that too. Like,
yeah.
And there's an interesting danger there. I love that anyone can do anything, but it's also very demoralizing to really bust your ass to do something, and it's just never going to work. Even though it worked for these other people.
I've had some really interesting conversations over the last few days with several good streamer friends who were like pouring their hearts and souls into their streams and like struggling so much because they're like, I just don't understand why this thing isn't working or this thing isn't working. And they are people who are really putting their whole heart and souls into what they're trying to do. And it's tough, right? Because like I look at that and what I see is that, and I was telling one of them this today. I was like, well, we've got all these value systems that all these different, businesses have invented, if you're on Twitch, being a partner is the success metric. And if you're on Instagram or Facebook or somewhere else, the number of followers or the blue check mark is the success metric. And what I told them today was that shit's made up.
It's made up. It's definitely made up, but also it is. It 100%
it's monetized,
is.
Though. So that's how they trick you to thinking that it's not made. That it's not just made up.
Of course.
They're like, well, we'll give you money, and it's like, okay, but then I see all these lovely people that are like dictating their entire value off of why they haven't become partner yet, or why they're not making it. Or today, God, I saw a streamer today that had. I think he had something like 17,000 followers. He was a partner, and he somehow found out how much money other partners were making and how much more it was than him. And he felt so upset and immediately blamed himself because of the leak.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit. And I told this to my friend yesterday who I was talking to this about. I was like, becoming partner is not going to fix this issue. It won't. Like, it will not fix your issue for good. I don't think there's an outside thing that you reach and you're like, well, I did it. I'm here. I don't have any self-esteem issues anymore. I just don't believe it.
No. For sure. Everything you're saying is correct. And these are all artifices of companies, corporations, capitalism. And that's you're 100% right. No question. I'm actually less fascinated by that. I'm more fascinated with this idea that like those people you're talking to are busting their ass. They are pouring their heart into it. And then you also need the third factor is like, are they talented? Are they great? Are they likable? Whatever. And then let's say, yes, they are. Box ticked. They've got everything except they didn't catch a wave, meaning
Exactly.
hey, there's this new game coming out and oh, I'm going to try this new game. Oh shit, this blew up. Wait, I'm really fun and entertaining, or I'm the best player at this. You know, it's fucking Ninja. It's like he's not the best Fortnite player, but there was a moment in time where Fortnite was becoming the biggest thing in the world.
Mhm.
This guy with blue hair who's really fun on a stream was like, yeah, maybe I'll play Fortnite. And then the wave blew up. And then all of a sudden he's the hottest shit in the goddamn universe. Not because he's the best, not because he's the funniest, not because he's the most engaging person you've ever seen, but because the tidal wave of circumstance. And I'm sure Ninja is he is very good at his craft. I have no doubt about that. But there were circumstances that flew him to the top, and then he smartly capitalized and doubled down on whatever the things were that made him a superstar. And kudos to him, credit to him, but also this applies to everything. This applies to all the billionaires in the world who are like, I built my business. No, you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
There were roads on which the trucks you drove down were paid by taxpayers. And you got a loan from your uncle to start your first ice cream shop. Nobody gets that except people who have the privilege of getting it. So this stuff is I guess what I'm saying is we're again seeing those circumstantial capitalistic things play out in the algorithmic space. And I'm of two minds, because it really sucks for those talented, hardworking, fantastic people who bust their butt and they just have no shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the flip side, there's just not enough room for every single human being to be a famous fill in the blank.
Yeah, no, I get it.
We just don't have enough. We don't have enough time in our day to watch every single person.
And I think in addition to that too, one other thought I've really thought about this is that to me, there is the world of the web. And what I was literally just talking to my husband about this earlier. I was like, you can have all the talent, you can have all those things. You really do just have to be in the right place at the right time. Because I can't tell you how many places I've worked. It's been like, oh my God, like, how do we go viral? How do we get something to go viral? It is almost impossible to get that mathematical formula, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like,
it's not a formula.
Don't know when, like you don't, like I was literally looking at some performance numbers today of like, stuff at work. And I was literally looking at it going, there's no rhyme or reason. I keep looking at the stuff because it's usually part of my jobs, but like, it's like, is there a rhyme or reason to what? No.
Tell me if you think differently. I felt, looking back on a career making a good number of quote unquote viral videos, in my time, I have had the privilege of making some really cool shit that I'm proud of that also got seen by a lot of people. And I'm very fortunate and proud to have done that. But doing that in a time where the internet was quieter, where it was like, the internet was quieter proportionally, and had the privilege of working at a media company that already had the internet's attention. So it was like, hey, if we combine Grumpy Cat, if we have access to Grumpy Cat, if we combine Grumpy Cat with, this meme of the moment, and then do a little video or a GIF, ain't nothing else happening on the internet more fun than this. So bloop, publish, boom, we did it. This is the hottest shit on the internet today, Tomorrow it's over. It's gone for, no one cares. But today, Tuesday, we just fucking knew the formula and had access to the components to combine them together to make the hottest shit on the internet of that day.
I
don't think you cannot do that today. There's just too many. So to some of your points earlier that we were talking about, like, you can make the funniest meme for your community of today, and the 50/100, maybe 10,000 people that love your thing, your stuff, are totally here for it. But like, that video is not going to be on the Today Show tomorrow morning the way stuff used to go down in ye fucking olden days of media 10 years ago.
Oh man, I really want to let her ye fucking olden days now. You're right though. I mean, like, this is 100% rantable and 100% correct. Like, all of that is right. I know there are some people who might tell you there's a formula, but I don't know. I don't personally feel like that is always and exactly the case. So
you could argue there used to be a formula, and now there's too many ingredients to ever, do it again quite the same way, unless you are super right place, right time, super lucky of like. And I love that. I do still adore seeing, I've just made this random shit, I don't know, whatever, bloop, and then someone on Reddit's like, look at this thing, and then now whatever. But then the other danger in that is like, I got 1 million views on this random shit I put online. Now I'm hot shit. Now I have a career. Now I'm an influencer. No, the next thing you publish, nobody cares. Yep. Unless you really, really do exactly the same thing where it's like, remember that thing? I did that thing again. And those people are like, yeah, that thing again. And then you sort of do the same thing over and over again. That's a treadmill that is hard to keep up. And
I think this is getting, I now feel like I'm getting way off topic.
So we're off topic. I know.
But I do feel like that is what leads people who are content creators to hit burnout or get close to burnout, where they're like, I can't, I literally can't keep up. You see influencers report this. You see all kinds of people doing content full time reporting this exhaustion, trying to keep up with literally something that you cannot achieve.
So I'm thrilled then to see, slowly but surely, a shift in mentality for some creators where it's like, I'm just going to do this small, repeatable thing because 50 people like it. And that's fine. And you know what? I can't make a living at it. I can't pay the bills. But you know what? Hey, 50 people, if you could just kick in like $1, $2 to just pay the server costs or like pay for the Adobe Photoshop or whatever it is I do, then I can keep doing it. And this is a thesis that I have in a lot of presentations that I do about this stuff. But it's like, thank God the web has matured and there are now platforms, and like, Twitch is Amazon. And so I'm not saying yay Twitch, but like Twitch and YouTube have built-in models where it's like, we fucking know that we need great content on these platforms or else everyone's out.
Yeah.
So, but we're not going to have great content on our platform unless content creators can make a living. So here's a subscribe button. Here's a whatever. But then simultaneously, you have Patreon, you have Kickstarter, you have Indiegogo, you have Ko-Fi or whatever, where it's like, I just want this to keep existing because it means a lot to me. So I'm going to kick in $1.
Yeah.
That is extraordinary. And it's very new. And I'm so grateful it exists. And I support it. Like I kick in $1 for a variety of creators because that's very important to me.
Yeah.
And I aspire to make things on the internet where somebody someday will be like, yeah, I like that thing, so here's $1, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely agree with every single one of those things. And I have not been bored during any part of this conversation.
Right. Well, this is what I'm saying. So where do you want to go from here? Because again, maybe you said something earlier, and maybe this is a thread. Games used to be fucking Pong. Games used to be Super Mario Brothers, which, no disrespect to Super Mario Brothers, actually that could be a very laser focused, intense game. Tetris, you can't do anything except play Tetris. You got to really be in there playing Tetris to do it.
You do.
And these are quote unquote simple games, but they are games with focus. But then you also have other, the open world explosion, the Minecraft, even like a Stardew Valley is like, I'm brewing coffee and wine in the shop so I can make double the profit, and then I got to go over and make sure I give a gift to Penny so that she's going to like me more, and then I got two more hours in the day, so get in the mine. I mean, like, it is a farming, relaxing simulator, except I got to min-max this thing all the way super hard
Right.
because ADHD time kicks in, and I got to just get every crop and do all the things. And so, like, we did not have those kinds of media, those kinds of games when we were growing up, but now we got them. And now I seek them out. And now, I'm a little different than you in my tastes. That's an understatement. We talk about that often, but like, I don't seek out A to B to C story linear stuff anymore. I should go back and experience some of those wonderful games that do exist. Certainly.
I mean, maybe not if they're not the right fit for you.
Sure. Yes. But what my craving I crave mechanical games where I have to think about 2,000 things at once. And I have said this on the podcast before. Warframe broke my brain. It broke my skull open, and I was like, whoa, there's so many things in here, and I don't understand them, but I got to know everything and obsess. And after I put that game away, I was like, give me the next hit. Where is it? Which one is it going to be? And I have been searching and enjoying some games, as we've discussed, who get me there. But I'll say this. I previously, to your point, I felt bad or guilty. I was like, oh shit, I need the crack in the veins, and that's a bad thing. But now I think a little bit differently of like, oh no, I've always my brain needs this stuff. And now aren't we so lucky we live in a time where there's 20, 50, 70,000 games I could do that's going to help me out with this craving.
Yeah. And
I'm of two minds.
Oh, go ahead, please.
No, I'm of two minds of like, I want to be addicted to a game, and also I don't want to be addicted to the game. That's actually what I wanted to ask you about too, of like, I want to paint my house purple. That is going to happen. I'm laser focused on it. Like, that's a superpower. What I'm struggling with lately across the pandemic and lately these days too is like, I am fixating on the wrong things.
Okay, well,
and that's getting me in trouble.
Well, getting you in trouble in what way?
I feel like I need to be accomplishing more things, like doing better professionally or being more creative. And I have stopped being interested in those laser focused creative endeavors. And I'm getting very hyper focused on like, why isn't this game running exactly the way it's supposed to be? Let me do 27 science experiments to isolate all the variables to figure out what the fuck's going on with this game that, like, I don't even like, but God fucking damn it, why isn't it working? That shit is not good for me. And I'm having trouble with it. And so, you know, I understand the superpower, but it's also it's a kryptonite too for me.
Sure.
And so what do you think about that?
Sure. That's a really great question, actually. So before I answer it first, I want to read something that I wrote. I said it to a fellow neurodiverse friend, and then I wrote it down immediately because I heard myself and went, oh.
Good for you.
So,
that's great.
However, the paper is like 4 feet away. So
right.
Now 5 seconds are going to pass in which I am not at the mic.
All right. I'm going to vamp. I'm going to play music here. Ready? Okay, here we go. This week,
and I'm back
on a very special episode. Okay, she's back. Hold on. Okay,
what the fuck was just happening?
I filled it in because I don't want dead air. I don't edit this, so I cannot.
Oh my god!
I have to fill it in.
That was really good to come back to. Okay.
How is a neurodiverse person supposed to listen to this? And then if there's 3 seconds of nothing,
you're like, what?
That's a crime. That's a crime.
I think what you did was clearly a genius, because I came back to it and immediately started to cackle. So that worked out well. But okay, here's what I said and then immediately wrote down.
Yes.
The biggest thing I have needed to hear as a neurodiverse person is that it's okay to enjoy your hyperfixations. Today, I see that my joy is valid, even if it doesn't look like neurotypical joy.
Let me say quickly that I fucking love that. However, my struggle right now is I am not enjoying the fixations.
Right.
I'm losing my mind.
I'm getting to that.
You.
I totally promise I'm getting to that. The only reason I wanted to share that first is because I feel like it is so common for us to feel ashamed of or tell ourselves stories. You should be going to do this. You should be going to do that. So yeah, if you're not enjoying it, I think of that, and you notice that you're not enjoying it. What I think of that as is a really helpful indicator. It's a piece of data for me that makes me go, oh, I'm doing that thing. And one thing I've had to learn, not only around my ADHD, but just in general in my life, is that just because you see something's going on and you're like, oh, that's not really serving me well, I don't like that, that doesn't mean you're going to be able to change it right away. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you need to see it and go, and then be like, well, I'll fix that tomorrow. And then, you go away and then you do it again, and then you don't like it. And then you're like, doing it again, fuck. And then maybe you'll go do something else. And then maybe you won't. Like maybe you're not quite ready yet. This has been really, really, really hard for me to accept as a person with ADHD, because I immediately feel that if I can notice myself doing something and it's clearly not benefiting me, that I need to fix that shit right now.
Yeah.
That's not always how it works.
Yeah.
I know.
This is
sucky answer.
It's not a sucky answer. It's extremely good advice. And
actually, I'm not done. Pause, because I don't want you to go further into the thought without hearing this part of it.
Please go.
So you said I should be doing other things. First, should is a really shaming word. Second, who says?
I do. Because I have things to accomplish in this world. God damn it. And if I'm fixated on things that don't serve me, then I am not enjoying things that I enjoy. I'm not achieving the goals I have for myself, and generally feeling poo-poo.
Where did you get the goals?
That's a clinical term.
Like, did you like wake up, or did you like come out of the womb from birth and go, I have these goals and I'm going to achieve them? Were they in your mind then? They weren't. I promise you, because you know why?
I mean,
you got the idea of the goals somewhere in the world.
I'm being a shithead with this answer, and it's obviously not true. And obviously, you are correct. You are right. However, yes, I did pop out of the womb and said, I need to create things.
I mean, to be honest, I did too. But I guess this is getting way above and beyond, I guess, like the maybe the ground of where I intended for us to talk about this, right? But like, I question anything anything you say to yourself that has the word should in it. I question. Says fucking who?
You're right.
You know, like if you're like, well, these are my goals and I want them. Why do you want them? Did you think in the world somewhere that what success looked a certain way and now you want that thing? Because it's like unlikely that you were just like, I have a goal and I'm going to accomplish this thing because it was born in my heart and mind. No, you probably got an idea somewhere in the world that that's what success looked like.
It's not. Yeah, you are correct, but also
who's the asshole now? Oh, lol.
All right, let me turn this another way. You have a baby, which is your book, for example. And it is something that is so important to you, and you've poured your heart and soul into it, and it matters. It matters. It has value. It is very, in your heart and soul, it is good, and it deserves to come into the world, in this case, be published in some way, and I'm just using it as an example, a tactical example. But for some reason, you got to paint the house purple. You're stuck painting everything in your life purple because, God damn it, I need everything to be purple. Mm-hmm. And you're not working on the book. You're not finishing that draft. You're not talking to publishers. So to then turn your question back on you, it's like, well, who says this book needs to exist? Well, you say,
some part of
and
you does.
In your heart that like this project really needs to come to fruition. And if it, I'll put it another way, if this book does not come to fruition, you will be sad or disappointed. That's where I am with some of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It really does. And I am now going to do yet another thing that I think I've never done on this podcast, which is read a piece of poetry. It's very small, but it really, really is the thing that I look to for comfort whenever this type of conversation or a line of thought comes up in my own head, which is often. Mm-hmm. The poet is Rilke, a German poet, my personal favorite. And the quote is, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." I'm reading that because I really want to share a thought I think is very beautiful, but also that this whole timetable that we think things are supposed to work on, sometimes that's just not how they go. And I think ADHDers, I think that we can sometimes really, 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 really need to control something. And we think, oh, it would just be so much easier if I wasn't like this, or if I could just get this thing done, or instead of reading this diatribe on how pasta was invented, I could just go and, do your dream project, right? But the truth of the matter is that today just might not be the right day to execute the dream project. And your next thought is probably going to be, well, if it's not going to be today, then when is it going to be? I don't know, man. But I can tell you that there's a lot of things that I thought I should have done sooner in my life, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and I wasn't ready until now. So is this about ADHD anymore? I guess, kind of, sort of. But like, yeah, in all honesty, as much as, it might be easy for you to go, I want to stop doing this thing and go do the other thing. You can't muscle yourself into doing the thing. And if you do, the thing you want to make is not going to come out the way that it should.
Okay,
that is my belief. Here's
the question, though. Is that poem in the public domain? Because we could sell a fuck ton of t-shirts if we print that.
I don't think so. I'm almost positive that his estate is owned by somebody. But for real though, I mean, I really do revisit that so often and understand, religious people, I think their answer to this, no offense to any religious person reading this podcast or hearing this podcast, by the way, religious people sometimes say, it's on God's time, not mine. And while I don't subscribe to that particular brand of religion, I do believe a sentiment that is somewhat similar in that I do feel like I cannot necessarily force myself into certain things before I am ready to do them. So, I mean, a couple of years ago, could you have imagined quitting a full-time job to go pursue, your own business in the vocation that you enjoyed?
No, because it was very scary and uncertain. And then through lots of, conversation and time and figuring out stuff, and agony too, like really agonizing over that decision. We as a household, as a couple, and my wife and I, of course, but that's a decision that is made as a team, not as an individual, as you know. Finally came to it, and it is and was right. And it did also happen at the right time. Truly, in all seriousness, though, I do want to say that, like, thank you for sharing that poem. It's extraordinary. It really is. Yeah. You put it on the table here, and I really did not know what to expect from, hey, here's a poem. And in all honesty, though, it is precisely the thing that is relevant to my situation right now. Good. I would like you to also send that to me, of course. Sure. I
would also recommend that you look up Rilke. It's Rilka, because there's Rilke. A lot more where that came from.
That a single, like, is that like an artist name, like a single, what do they call it?
It's his last name. His full name is Rainer Maria Rilke, a German writer and poet. He's been long dead, I think.
But is this like the 1700s? Is this the 1950s? Like, what are we talking about here?
I want to say Rilke's era was maybe like 18. Let's see. Let's see when Rilke was alive. But at any rate, one of those writers that they have a voice that you'll never, ever, ever forget. Born in 1875, died in 1926.
Okay, so creeping into the modern-ish era, which seems like a bajillion years ago in our era, but very. I'm really not a poetry person. It's funny, and I don't know if you're like a poetry connoisseur, but I always think of myself as like, poetry. Okay, I'm not really poetry. And then you hear or read some exquisite poetry. You're like, holy shit.
But you have to find those people. And the hard part is that, no offense to all the poets of the world, but, it's a very certain type of voice or words that speak to you. And it can be hard to go sit in a giant, section of poetry at your local Barnes & Noble or whatever.
Yeah.
And
how do you find it?
And find that person, right? And so for me, I got very, very, very lucky and found this particular poet when I was a teenager. But yes, I get that. And it's very easy to be like, I'm not really into poetry. And to be quite honest, I'm not into the majority of poetry either. But I am very into this particular one. And, I think also it's interesting, right? Because it's like you think of poetry and you think of rhyming lines sometimes. But to me, poetry and prose and fiction and writing and video game scripts, really, they're all just assemblies of words that, come in different formats, I think.
Of course.
And I try to think of it like that, being a person who maybe one of my greatest hyperfixations of all time is the art of words.
Amen. In all honesty, like I would love for you to send me that particular poem, because that is just exquisite, exquisitely applicable to everything we have just talked about.
I have
But
it
like
printed
also,
out and like in a place where I can look at it all the time.
that's nice. That's
Because
excellent.
one of my ADHD hyperfixations is that if something is bothering me and I cannot figure out the answer right then, I will chew on it like a horse or a cow chewing cud over and over and over and over and over. And I will like worry and like anxiety myself into a corner. That's another piece of ADHD actually. And we really didn't dig into that too much. But it's really easy to do that because we don't realize that we're actually hyper focusing on our own unhappiness. And I do believe that being able to take a step back and realize that as uncomfortable as it is, sometimes we're just in a space where you really need to just be with the questions because the answer is just, it's not time yet. And does that sound like some mythical shit? Sure. But you know how much mythical shit I've consumed in video game form over the last 30 years? A lot.
Elves and spaceships, baby. Truly, though, this is the advice I have been needing to hear. And it's nice to hear someone else talk about those, I don't know, let's call them negative fixations or questioning fixations. What you just described is exactly what I deal with. And, you know, I'll also say briefly, because we should wrap up here, but like you have been open with your stuff a lot, and we have talked about it off mic of like, I think you have had a tougher time in your life with this issue. I have never been like, oh man, I've got a real problem here that I need to solve. Only in the last 2 to 3 years have I been like, man, I cannot get out from under this fixation or whatever. And it is certainly pandemic related. It is certainly like work from home. Like I am just here thinking about my own stupid shit and life all fucking day. I don't, you know, in our jobs and previous jobs, we're just here alone. We're not talking to people on any regular basis. And that has, is mostly great, honestly. But then the unintended consequence of that is like, oh, I don't think about anyone except me. And that sucks, you know? So it's nice to hear. It's not nice to hear. It is fascinating to hear and disappointing to hear that you have struggled with capital ADHD for a long time and didn't know. And whatever is going on in my brain, I think is a milder case that has been flamed up over the last year or so.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck?
That's the thing, though. I don't really think that makes either person's, you know, worse or better, you know, whatever. I and this is perfect, right? Because it really dovetails right back into the concept of the word neurodiverse. Like, what does that mean? Neuro, brain, diverse, you know, different. Like that, to me, that means we have two different types of neurodiverse brains. And yeah, there are some things that I won't lie. Like I reflect back on them and I'm like, that really sucked. That really sucked. But I also feel like there's no way that I would be the person that I am today without all of those experiences. And I'll be quite honest. I like me. I never thought I'd ever say that, but I do. And part of that has really been recognizing and embracing this as part of the whole package. So yeah, it's not all bad. There's hope. I guess that's what I really want to say to anybody listening, and also to us, because we need to hear it. There's hope that things can be better. You know, that your head won't, you know, sound like constant noise. That your brain will always be racing. That you'll always feel like you're not being understood or heard. There are ways for all those things to get better now more than ever, I think.
Love it. There's nothing else I can add to that. Thank you for those final thoughts, and thank you for this conversation. Thanks for like suggesting it and thinking we should do it, and also, you know, talking openly and sharing all this stuff. It's very valuable to me. And like you said, if it's even valuable to one person, that's also fantastic. So yeah, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Next week we'll talk about video games, what we're playing. Maybe some special guests will drop by. We'll see.
We'll see.
But for now, thank you for entering the chat with us. Our theme music is by Azure Flux. Our logo is illustrated by Just Call Me Katarina. And we usually say, "Hey, what are you playing?" But obviously, if this conversation was relevant to you, or maybe it's not, but you just found it interesting, come on into the Discord. Tell us what is going on in your diverse brain. The link to that community is in the show notes, of course, but also email us, haveenteredthechat@gmail.com. Share those thoughts with us, and we would like to read those on the show. And if you enjoyed this, rate and review the show on your favorite podcast platform so others can find it and join our community as well.
Actually, Matt, can I just interject one more thing?
No.
What I want to say is that in our Discord channel, we actually have a dedicated, actually in our Discord server, we have a dedicated channel. And it is called Neurodiverse. And we do have a collection of people. It's a small group for right now. It's a collection of people who identify as both gamers and neurodiverse individuals. We are continuing this conversation there. And if you're seeking people to discuss this topic with, and you really just need to know that other people like you exist and get it, we are there. So I think that normally our Discord info is in the show notes. Yes?
Always.
Yeah. So if you would like to join that conversation as well, that's where you can find it.
Praise hands emoji. That is all I have to say about that. And we're going to talk at you next week. Bye.
Bye.